Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here once again with a new video, but this time not a review. I'm actually going to talk about something I think would be kind of interesting for a lot of people, and that is 5 games, 5 franchises, 5 IPs I would like to see come back on the Nintendo Switch 2 over the course of its lifetime. Now, some of these are going to be kind of obvious, and some of these are going to be kind of, hopefully, interesting. And the first one, of course, I'm talking about here is Kid Icarus Uprising. Now, I don't necessarily need a Kid Icarus Uprising 2. Hell, I think a Kid Icarus Uprising HD alone would be an interesting thing. Now, I played this game mostly just at trade shows, but I always found the control scheme way too awkward and way too crampy for my big old gorilla-ass hands. So I never really bought the full game. I never played through the whole thing, but I know it was a big love letter to the franchise. I know Sakurai, is a big fan of, obviously, his, Kid Icarus, and I think he was very proud of his work that he did on here, and for all accounts, it was pretty good. I know all you Gen Zers love the shit out of this game, so there you go. But yeah, I think it would be time, now that we don't have to worry about a single analog stick setup, with the Switch 2, with Joy-Con 2s and whatever, gyro controls, however you want to go about it, I think it's time now. We could definitely do this. Hell, you could even use mouse controls, for this game. It feels like such a perfect setup and something to satisfy all of the quirky eccentricities that go on in Sakurai's head or went into his head when making the original game on the Nintendo 3DS. So yeah, using mouse controls or gyro controls or dual analog controls, whatever. I think this is the perfect game to bring back or upgrade. I mean, just an HD version of the original would be great, because this game didn't quite set the sales records on fire. It sold kind of okay. In fact, I would say probably somewhat disappointing sales for Nintendo, because it was a big title. When they revealed the 3DS, this was like a big showpiece game. It was a game that was kind of trying to go a little harder graphically, though Capcom really upstaged them with Resident Evil Revelations, as well as even that Snake Eater 3D demo. But Nintendo was like, hey, this was supposed to be like a big 3D graphical showpiece. And again, I don't think we really have to worry. I don't think playing the game in 2D, quote-unquote 2D on our screens, really loses anything. Most people, we like the 3DS. I love the 3DS, but, I turned off the 3D pretty much a minute into any given game. Most of the time, I just had it off. It was cool. It was neat. It did not make the game. It did not make or break very many games on the system. And I think Kid Icarus Uprising would fare perfectly fine in HD, in 1080p or 4K on the Switch 2, using mouse controls, gyro controls, and dual analog controls, whatever. I think this is just a perfect title to bring back. Give it a second chance at life. Because if you remember, 3DS, it sold well in the end, 75 million units. But that initial 6 months was struggle bus for the system. And it really set a precedent for a lot of people, that it wasn't worth the exorbitant price they thought they could get away with initially for the system. So in the end, I think, if any game kind of needs a second chance from a major mainline Nintendo-owned first-party IP, hey, I think Kid Icarus Uprising could do well. And hell, if they wanted to just go, hey, just do full-on sequel route, that's great too. I think, again, the whole setup with mouse controls and everything on the Switch lend itself perfectly to doing a brand new Kid Icarus game. Especially in the weird rail shooter, third-person, whatever, I don't know what style you would call the 3DS game, but it certainly wasn't like the originals. But either way, yeah, Kid Icarus Uprising. I think that's a perfect game to bring back to the Switch 2. And with that being said, let's move on to our next title. And this one I think is going to be a very obvious one for a lot of people, but I think it bears mentioning once again. And that, of course, is Star Fox. Oh, poor Star Fox. You've gone through the ringer. The last time we saw this poor franchise in any sort of major capacity was Star Fox Zero on the Wii U, a disastrous game that pretty much was the sort of unceremonious last fart, before the system just croaked completely. It was supposed to be a big return to form. You got Platinum Games doing it. Them with their insane action arcade roots would seem like a perfect fit. But Miyamoto had got a Miyamoto, and he had to like stick his dick in the pie and force upon the game a wildly unconventional control scheme that people did not like. And hell, even listening to Miyamoto like talk about, well, if people just played it for a half hour, they'd understand. And it's kind of like, how on earth do you, Miyamoto, of all people, sit there and say, like, if people just played my game for a half hour, they'd understand the controls? Like, controls should be something you understand within 30 seconds or less. You should not take 30 minutes. It's like the most weirdly un-Miyamoto thing I think he's ever said. But if anything, it's just kind of like, man, I don't know how out of touch you got to be, but man, they really, like, he really loved his weird ass control scheme of this game. And what it basically meant was that you used the Wii U tablet as a gyro control that independently operated the movement and the lasers. So in other words, you would be piloting the ship with an analog stick, but you would be aiming with the gyro of the Wii U tablet. So it was always this weird sort of like, things don't always line up. You have to like constantly look up and down, you know, to sync, you know, where your thumb is moving an analog stick versus where your hands holding the thing behind it are pivoting and aiming for it. And it never came together. It never felt great. The levels, strangely, because of this, were never as like fast-paced or as action-packed as you would hope. There was like one level that felt like it was like living up to the Platinum Names legacy. But yeah, it was a disaster start to finish. But let's not focus entirely on the disaster that was Star Fox Zero. Let's focus on the future. And I think I speak for every Star Fox fan here when I say all we really want is a new rail shooter. They've tried, you know, to reinvent the wheel every time with this franchise, and it's just, no, shut up, rail shooter. All we want, rail shooter. You know, you fly around on a ship, maybe you could do the tank or the sub, whatever. Rail shooter. Move forward, avoid obstacles, get in fights, get in dogfights. You know, all range mode, maybe we can give it a pass, but like, rail shooter. Stop trying to get us out of the ship. Stop trying to make it an RTS. Stop trying to make it a Zelda clone. Stop trying to make it, you know, a third-person shooter game. No. Rail shooter. We just want a rail shooter. We don't want any sort of like again, we don't want no reinvention of the wheel. We don't want some like old man, you know, yells at Cloud, you know, my control scheme's the best, you know, acquiesce to my demands, goddammit. No. Shut up. Rail shooter. It's for the best. It's what we want. Now, I think a really good-ass rail shooter in the Star Fox would sell good. I don't think this is ever going to be a top seller franchise, and it's never going to do like Animal Crossing or Smash Brothers or Mario Kart numbers, but a respectable 5 million is easily within grasp of Star Fox. Just make it a goddamn amazing rail shooter. Put a really cool, you know, dogfight multiplayer mode in there. Call it a day. That's all we want. That's all any Star Fox fan wants. I speak for all of them. So yeah, brand new Star Fox game that's just a really cool rail shooter. That's, I think, what we all want. Now, moving on to the next game, we've got, this one will be obvious too, but hey, F-Zero. We just got GX on the Nintendo Switch Online, and it's great. I wish the online was worth a shit because, you know, that was a bit of a party pooper trying to play this game online with people. But nonetheless, would love to see a brand new F-Zero. We did get F-Zero 99, but again, that's sort of like a cool, weird spin-off of the original SNES game. I think I speak for everyone when I'm like, nah, we want an F-Zero SX, right? We want F-Zero SX. A Switch X Rally F-Zero game. Brand new graphics, you know, widescreen, 60 frames solid locked. Go back to Sega if you really need to, though I think they're pretty busy with their Project Sentry and other stuff now. But yeah, we want a classic, brand new, big-ass F-Zero game for the Switch 2. And I think the Switch 2, with the juice under its hood, we've gotten to a point now where you can make a solid, locked 60 frames per second F-Zero game on the system, and it would be fine, even if it isn't like the most amazing. We don't need this game to look the best on the system, and Lord knows most of the time F-Zero games weren't like the graphical showpieces, you know, of course, until Sega got a hold of it and said, hold my beer. But yeah, I mean, we just need an F-Zero game, locked solid 60, plays really well, brand new courses, and great online. All we need. All we need. Could just be 4-player online, could be 8-player online, don't care. Just a good, solid new F-Zero experience for the Switch 2. This is all those poor F-Zero fans have been asking for years. So why don't you give them what they want, Nintendo, and stop screwing around here? Yeah, I don't think I need to say anything more. New F-Zero, F-Zero SX, make it happen. And then nextly, we're going to get a little more different. Now, this one, not as old as the other ones, but hey, I still would like to see a new one. And of course, I'm talking about Astral Chain. Astral Chain. What a cool game. Obviously, Platinum's not in the same place where they were when Astral Chain 1 came out. But here's the funny thing about this game. Nintendo owns the IP for this game outright. And Takahisa Tara, the director of the game, no longer works at Platinum. And neither does Kamiya, neither does the supervisor. So, all that being said, Nintendo could make Astral Chain with or without Platinum Games. They could do it with its original director creator. We have to see where he landed up, working, and just maybe take wherever he went and say, hey, let's do an Astral Chain 2 together. I'm not exactly sure if that's entirely possible, but again, Nintendo doesn't need Platinum. But hey, Ninja Gaiden 4, from all accounts, is turning out pretty well. So even if they wanted to go without the original director, which I would be against, they could go back to Platinum. But again, being the fact that they own the IP and Platinum doesn't, and the original creator director is not at Platinum anymore, it's like, well, you could still make this happen without them. So let's go for it, I say. That will take some doing. You're going to have to find the right publisher, right developer for the project. But I think it's a project worth merit. People like this game. The only thing that really held this game back was just the Switch's potato hardware. And since we got juicier, beefier, meatier hardware now with the Switch 2, and it runs Cyberpunk just, super fine, I think, yeah, let's do it. Let's make an Astral Chain 2. Let's find who we need to find. Let's, hook up the right developers, and let's do this. Let's get this project going. I don't think it needs to be a one and done. It would be kind of sad if it was. It's a really cool project. It was a really cool middle of the life Switch title, and I think it's absolutely worth revisiting. I think Astral Chain 2 would be a great title, be a great thing to get people hyped up for the Switch, for the Switch 2. Again, it's not necessarily going to be a system seller nonetheless, but it'll definitely be a game that's going to appeal to a hardcore gamer audience and be like, hey, you liked Astral Chain 1? We're going to do it too. By God, hell or high water, with or without Platinum, we're going to do an Astral Chain 2, and we're going to try to make it as good as we can. And we got way more hardware, way more juice in our hardware under the hood. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's make an Astral Chain 2. I don't see why not. Again, Nintendo is at its best when its portfolio is the most diverse. And I think, when you look back at the Switch 1 and you look at that library, yes, you can look at the mega sellers, Mario Kart and Animal Crossing, Smash Brothers, and a lot of Pokemon games, shame on you all for buying those. You look at that, like, sure, you look at that and you think, okay, well, they all buy the Animal Crossing, Nintendo, Mario Brother bullshit, right? Whatever. But look at the entirety of the Switch's library, just first party. Look at what Nintendo published first party on the Switch 1. And it is a wide breadth of games. It is a ton of different genres, different styles, different age sets. The Switch 1 is Nintendo's best-selling console for a reason, and part of that reason is because of how branched out they were in all aspects. They were hitting all target demographics. There was no singular demographic. They weren't just going for, well, I want kids, ages 6 to 11, and I want something, and I want to get some cozy gamers. No, they did cozy, they did action-packed, they did everything in between. And I think that's going to be the key to success for any big console. And Astral Chain 2 absolutely fills that, hey, we want like a really cool action gamer void to be filled. And here we go. This is the game to do it. So again, Astral Chain 2, I've made my case. Last one, I don't know if I want a sequel to this or if I just want an HD. This is more of a Kid Icarus situation, but it would be really great to pull this game out of the jail it's in on the standard definition Wii, and that is The Last Story. Now, I can't say this was Sakaguchi's last RPG. Fantasian did just come out last year and bombed spectacularly. But Last Story was a really cool game on the original Wii. And it was like the last time Sakaguchi did a big budget console RPG. And it turned out pretty well. Now, it is a little different from your traditional. It is not a travel around the world game. It's more of, it's way closer to something like Vagrant Story than say something like Final Fantasy. But I think that has its own merits. I think, you know, the sort of political intrigue set in one kind of like large central location kind of game. It's very cool. It's got a really neat real-time battle system. It's got a lot of customization on the characters and their you know, and their weapons and clothing and costume, and it's just it's a really cool game. The thing that sucks the most about it, frankly, is that it's chunky. It's on hardware that's choking as it's trying to render it, and this would be solved with the Switch 2. So I think more than, say, Last Story 2, which sounds funny when you say it, but I think just Last Story HD, you know, Last Story remastered, retold, yeah, call it that. There you go, hire me. Last Story retold would be a perfect game to sort of like, hey, I know most of you missed out on this. Hell, Nintendo didn't even publish this game in North America. This would be a fantastic game to reintroduce the world to. So I'm very much in favor of, hey, let's do a Last Story HD. Let's make this happen. This would be a great game for the Switch 2. It would be a great game to have in between the Monolith Soft projects. It's not as good as their games, you know, don't get me wrong. Let's not get crazy here, but it's still a pretty awesome game and worth bringing back, worth remastering. I think it would be a fantastic game. The soundtrack's phenomenal by Nobuo Uematsu. Again, I have almost nothing but good things to say about this game. Again, like it's closer to sort of, it's less Final Fantasy and more Vagrant Story. And if that sounds awesome to you, then it is. You know, and then be happy because it is awesome. And I totally think this game deserves another shot at life. Nintendo should find a developer to do this. I think it's totally worth the time. Hell, you know, maybe even Namco, Namco Bandai, whatever. Like, bring this shit back. It's worth bringing back. So those are 5 games I would love to see brought back on the Switch 2. Let me know what other games and franchises you would love to see get either another shot at life or get a full-on sequel to on the Switch 2, since, hey, the system's still pretty new. We're still in its infancy stage, and there's still a lot that could happen in the lifetime of this system. So, yeah, I hope, I hope I hope these games, any of these games, have a shot at coming back. I feel all of these are kind of long shots. I feel Sakurai's never going to be available for Kid Icarus. Star Fox and F-Zero might as well be dead. Astral Chain's a pretty big ass pull considering the state of Platinum and the director of that game. And of course, Last Story, like, I don't think Sakaguchi has himself said he has no interest in revisiting the title. I have no idea why. I get it. You like to go surfing in Hawaii because you can, but like, come on, man. Like, give your game another shot at life. It deserves it. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the channel later, dudes.